So this is the only piece that I have located in any of the Fleet Street papers of Sunday, the 8th of November 2020. And it reads, "Tending to the homeless was a rare COVID success. We are failing again." Now that is about the legal threats imposed on the homeless people, and especially those who are liable to be deported if they are sleeping rough. And we shall be dealing with this one at some length. Let's look at the one that this is in the Observer, right? So it's saying it's page 25. On page 25 of the Observer. So let's see where it's a comment page, and it's a comment by Barbara Ellen, Ellen. Page 25 of the Observer, London, of Sunday the 8th of November 2020. So she's saying, and I'll be reading this, "What happened to caring about the homeless during the pandemic? Why am I seeing people sleeping on the street in this bitterly cold weather, leaving them open to infection and to infecting others?" That's Barbara Allen. And then it goes on. "During the first lockdown, many people were put into hostels, or other forms of accommodation, saving hundreds of lives and fending off a coronavirus outbreak among the homeless population that could have spread into the wider community. The everyone in strategy was such a success, you couldn't help wondering why it wasn't happening anyway. Now, homeless charities and the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, are asking for a repeat of this scheme. And while extra government funding has been allocated to help especially vulnerable homeless people, the charity crisis says this will run out quickly, and anyway, the money is less than what was given in March. The government is being asked yet again to lift the no recourse to public funds rule. That means migrant workers with leave to stay can't access certain welfare benefits, frequently leaving them without adequate funds. And post-Brexit legislation announced last month means that foreign nationals, almost half of rough sleepers in London, could be deported if they're suspected of sleeping on the streets. Many of these people will have been working in restaurants, bars, and shops, losing their income directly because of the pandemic. But right now, it's impossible to sofa surf. There are concerns that people could be lured into forms of modern slavery out of desperation to avoid being deported for sleeping rough. Winter weather makes it much harder to sleep outside. This leaves homeless people with a stark choice to take their chances on the street or try to find shelters, which, even if they are open, would leave them highly vulnerable to infection. This puts all the talk of saving Christmas into perspective. This is the time of year when we are urged to think of homeless people and make donations, which can still happen. With the pandemic, however, these people are in danger of being sidelined when their situation is worse than ever. It's not just about what's happening to the homeless, it's about what's not happening for them. It makes no sense that they and those who help them are receiving less funding now than in March. It's unconscionable that at a time like this, people are struggling to access their rightful benefits. It's inhumane that anybody is terrified that if they are forced to sleep rough, they could end up deported. It's already November, and the government must act decisively to save lives and stave off the spread of infection in the homeless population and beyond. If we cared about homeless people in March, we should care just as much today. Now, that is the piece by Barbara Allen. And that is a piece that, as far as we're concerned, that's the only piece that is in the papers on Sunday, the 8th of November 2020, the Fleet Street papers. And we shall comment on the contents and the implication of what she's saying there in a very short while. Now, doing the post of her kind of name and photograph on the Twitter account. This is the comment here on Barbara Allen's comment on the homeless and the lack of support for them. This is typical of the observer. Whatever the reason, the observer never ever gets it quite right. It's a wishy-washy, completely banal, and kind of outsiders, kind of detached comment. And it doesn't actually reflect the truth of how homeless people are made homeless and how homelessness is created. So anyone in doubt about why we call this program as doing the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street can use that wishy-washy piece as a very current reason why we are the ones who are doing the diagnosis of Fleet Street, nobody else. We shall be talking about no recourse to public funds and all the other things that she has referred to. But she has referred to the main issue being the funding that the government is not paying, making available to the charities, which she mentions the charity crisis, but she includes all the other charities that are making claims that they are helping the homeless people. Now, As we have said before, the charities, which is in our view historically and currently based on the amount of money that it received, the charity that is mostly supported and mostly known is the one called Shelter. And in the years that Shelter has existed, the decades, Shelter has not told the truth about those who cause homelessness. Funding is, of course, relevant, and funding is absolutely urgent. But as we were saying about Tower Hamlets, the Tower Hamlets Council's behavior and the behavior of Newham Council and some other councils, well, we have said that all the councils across England are corrupt cliques, unaccountable cliques. Now, when the UK central government, fronted by Johnson and represented by Robert Jenrick, said that everyone in should be the policy about homeless people, it was kind of hailed as doing the right thing. That is only part of the kind of truth. The actual truth is not complete unless the role of the councils and the role of the courts of law, the so-called county courts are the eviction courts, and the role of the lawyers in the legal profession and the role of the MPs and the silence by the Keir Starmer fronted Labour Party opposition. As I have said in the last 48 hours, the fact that Keir Starmer kind of commandeered the Labour Party kind of named MPs to vote for Johnson's lockdown without a debate included the failure to hold the Johnson administration to account on the question that homeless people are facing. And there are various aspects of the homelessness crisis that Barbara Allen doesn't seem to have understood. And the fact that she is the only one who has written a piece about this shows the complete lack of engagement and lack of concern for the homeless by the Fleet Street papers. And she's of course kind of perpetuating the myth that the local councils are doing okay in solving or helping the homeless people. They are not. And so let's start again by listing the key kind of elements that are responsible for creating homelessness. Local councils, the main ones, and very close second are the county courts. And the very close third are the licensed law traders who appear in county courts and get paid in the name of the litigants, that is the targets of eviction notices under legal aid, which is still available, and the media, and of course the parliament and others. But it is the media that actually leaves out the key facts. The stock councils have, every council in London has got any amount of empty properties. And if the empty properties that are available were given to the homeless people, then there would be still spaces available for other people, because there are more empty properties in London than there are homeless people, or people kind of forced to look for shelter on the streets. And the other thing is that the Labour Party has no policy, and she has not said anything about the Labour Party. If the government is failing, then the Labour Party should be holding the government to account for this failure. She has nothing to say. And we have been saying that the Labour Party spokesperson on housing has been politically dead for months. And the role of the county courts, she should be talking about, and the fact that the eviction kind of ban that was imposed in March should be kind of reimposed. That would stop a lot of people being kind of violated in the extreme way. So we shall be talking about that kind of gap and the kind of ignorance by the Fleet Street papers and the media and the mainstream. We go back to the origins of the corruption in the councils. And we take up the case of the victims of Tower Hamlets Council corruption and criminality. The victims include the people, the orphan children who were kind of abused and are still suffering from various abuses and consequences. And the woman stranded in Bangladesh passed away, and the woman could have been helped by the High Court if the High Court was kind of looking at the reality and recognizing the woman's rights and dealing with the main central issue between two so-called members of the family of the woman who was kind of involved in litigation or court cases and appeal on the false claim that they were both caring for the welfare of the woman. The contents of the court case show that they were not caring about the woman at all. They were actually having a fight with one another. And the woman was exposed to serious physical, mental, emotional danger and violations. And her condition deteriorated over a period of 15 years. And for 15 years, she was denied the daily medical care and medication that she was receiving while she was at home in London in Tower Hamlets, before being tricked by one member of the family to go to Bangladesh. And as soon as she arrived there, her passport was stolen or it disappeared. It is widely believed that her passport was sold to somebody in return for money, in exchange for money, but the details cannot be found because it has not been possible to establish what happened to that passport. All other attempts to get a replacement document so that she could just document one off, she could be allowed to travel back to London, failed because of the serial kind of lies being told by the so-called members of the family who told lies about her, and she could not comment on any of the lies or correct any of those lies because they were not being perpetrated with her permission or consulting her. And as I have said, the details of her 15 years will be updated, will be included in the update in due course. This is the extent of the negligence by the corrupt Tower Hamlets Council and the racist immigration kind of entry certificate personnel in place in the UK High Commission in Bangladesh, and the racists controlling the policies over how many years? Over the period starting in 2001, when she was tricked out of London in May 2001. So it was Tony Blair's regime, then it was Gordon Brown's regime, then it was the condom collusion, and it was the era of Theresa May at the Home Office. So all of them, all the particular position holders at the time concerned were approached and were given the actual facts about how absolutely urgent this was, that this woman be helped in returning home to London. All the efforts were kind of obstructed and sabotaged, and the main saboteurs included the Tower Hamlets Council and the so-called adult social care colluded with the withdrawal of service and denial of service to these most vulnerable and dangerously exposed and deteriorating health kind of experiencing person in, say, a stranded position in Bangladesh. She had no immediate relations there, and even if they were, it was impossible for 15 years plus to know which was the truth and which wasn't, because various people at various times gave various versions of the events as to how she was doing. Essentially, she was being physically abused by more than one person, and she was being kind of deprived of food, and she was being deprived of a bed to sleep on. All of these were included in the list of items that were communicated to Lutfur Rahman during the calendar years of his post in Tower Hamlets as the mayor. And Lutfur Rahman ignored all of the information. And similarly, the very delicate situation about the orphan children being abused and exploited, that was also communicated in very delicate ways so that the legal safety of the children was paramount, so it was not kind of compromised. But the information was enough to constitute evidence that it was an emergency concerning the welfare of several children, orphan children. And the source or sources of caring for these children and the women stranded in Bangladesh was or were the ones that were being attacked by the criminal gangs that Lutfur Rahman was aware of and his regime was colluding with. And this was brought to a kind of most dangerous state during 2012. But the battle with the Tower Hamlets Council had been going on for years, since 2001. And at various stages, various people in various posts were told, as I said, without disclosing the personal details of the victims involved. But the council was told to provide the instant support, and so that both the children and the woman stranded in Bangladesh could and would have been helped immediately, within a matter of weeks or months at the most. Instead, they were neglected for years. Instead, the party or parties who could support the stranded woman and the children was or were targeted for attacks on their own rights and on their own housing. And those attacks included and impacted very seriously on the 3 kittens and their home in Brick Lane. Now, all these people that were that were in the main kind of involved and were contacted about these serious situations, most of them were Bangladeshis. And there is nothing available anywhere in the Bangladeshi community that is a demographic description. It's not a description based on ethics or morality of the characters of these people, but the sheer population, the demography. There are various people in the community that are regularly in receipt of various public funds, either through the central government or through local councils or other similar kind of sources, on the alleged claim that they are helping people in vulnerable positions in the community. Now, the experience of these orphans and the woman who passed away in Bangladesh after suffering for 15 plus years shows that all these groups and grouplets or individuals that have been funded and have been receiving funds totaling millions of pounds, in fact, totaling hundreds of millions of pounds over the years concerned, that they are not helping people in the community who are actually in dire, desperate, very urgent need of help. In fact, one key member of the staff of one of the non-profit organizations that has been kind of generously funded by the council and other sources, and that operates in the name of helping vulnerable, disabled people, was involved and remains contemptibly involved in the attacks carried out by the Spitalfield Small Business Association. So the question is, when we talk about opposing racism, racist discrimination, that is absolutely the right thing to do. What happens when members of the same ethnic or kind of nationality backgrounds behave with utmost naked cruelty to some of the members in the community? What is the explanation? It is not racism, of course, but what is it then? And where does it come from, and where and how to eradicate it? In the current week's news commentary, Mary L. Trump, Dr. Mary L. Trump, she is a psychologist and an academic, and she wrote the book published at the beginning of 2020 about the dysfunction in the character of Donald Trump. Now, she says in the interviews and comments that she has published in the last kind of 2 days that Donald Trump is incapable of remorse, of decency. And she's saying that as she is a blood niece. She's a niece of Donald Trump. So that shows that it is not necessarily somebody else, some other family, that the dysfunctioning person would attack or violate or kind of enrage to such an extent that they would be forced to do what Mary Trump belatedly has been doing. She's a supporter of Hillary Clinton's bid in 2016. And the reason why she supported Hillary Clinton, obviously, is most obvious because she knows Donald Trump, so she knew that he was unfit. So where does this motivation come from? When members of the same family find other members of the family so outrageous, so unfit for society, and she has called Donald Trump a sociopath. He's a criminal, psychologically a criminal. So what to do with a member or members of the family that are turned out like that? And when that kind of thing is happening, who can help the victims of the behavior of this kind of family members? If the local council had done the decent thing, then it would have moved all stones and made sure that urgent help was made available. As far as it was concerned, the maximum help was given to party or parties that were the best fitted and suitable and anxious to help the victims. He didn't do any of that thing. So going back to the way Rabina Khan behaved favorably to this white man, John White, and she behaved completely in the opposite way towards a Bangladeshi man whose house is in Shadwell and who had a meeting with Steve Hill, attended by the two local councillors, Harun Mia and Rabina Khan. Rabina Khan and Harun Mia completely let down that man, that person. Whereas Rabina Khan physically, almost literally flew to find out what help she could give to this white man. So if that is the attitude, if that is the reason, the kind of a jealousy based on the fact that a member of the same community, let's say, demographic, as I said, would get some benefit or get some kind of remedy to the wrongs being done to them, instead of making that happen, making that person get the remedy, these two councillors were behaving with contemptuous kind of subservience to the council employee over whom they had the democratic say. So Steve Hill was out the upper hand at the meeting. And this same kind of attitude by Rabina Khan was repeated in the experience and the knowledge of our campaign over the 6 calendar years. And when the racists in the Socialist Workers' Party kind of organized Ozon Provocateurs kind of event, they always make sure to invite and include Rabina Khan. I mean, she has become the regular hijab wearing token diversity content in the racist operation of racist activities. And Rabina Khan features there, like she did at a do held in the corner of the Wilmot Street and the Bethnal Green Road, after an African woman or African women attacked a hijab wearing Muslim woman. And after the so-called protest, which was completely ill attended, but featured Rabina Khan as the main kind of name, and she gave a completely empty kind of spiel. That is more than a year ago, and nothing has happened to that campaign. Nothing has happened to the anti-Muslim attacker. When I asked her at that kind of event, just outside the place where they had the rally, I asked her near the entrance to the Bethnal Green underground station, where there were other people, including her new friend from the Liberal Party. When I asked her to comment on the role of the police, Rabina Khan refused to comment on the role of the police. And the only reason why she could refuse to comment on the role of the police would have been if she were part of the UK central government strategy of prevent. That means that Muslims don't make any comment about the operation and policies of the police and the other state agencies. Now, a person like that, what would they do if they were told that as a result of the council's employees being racist and prejudiced, any number of people, most of whom are Bangladeshis or similarly kind of descended or identifiable, were being denied their basic human rights to housing and other things. There has been nothing in the 6 calendar years over which Rabina Khan was a member, so-called, of the Tower Hamlets Council and a member of the so-called cabinet fronted by Lutfur Rahman, that made any difference to the status quo of racist discrimination and lying by council employees like Steve Hill and others. So there is no accountability by the generally kind of constituted council, and there is no kind of democratic say about the role of the council being publicly made. The say that is made publicly made by the councillors in place at the time about anything, about housing, about other discrimination, and about other obstructions or other illegalities. So when the Liberals give her a job, they strategically cite her in connection with one member of the Liberals' House of Peers kind of contingent. So what they are giving Rabina Khan is a kind of platform, indirectly kind of connected with the House of Peers. And the media, being completely morons, think that by being connected with the House of Peers and the Lib Dems, Rabina Khan therefore has acquired the qualification, the capacity, the abilities, and the intellectual abilities and the political insight and abilities. So the Two Beards, who is the owner of the Independent, gives Rabina Khan kind of the vultures kind of spot. Whenever there is an issue created by the campaign of others, Rabina Khan then appears as the author of an article on the Independent on the same subject. But all of the kind of spin that she peddles for herself are actually based on the borrowing of the work of other people of that week. She has nothing to contribute because her capital is lying, and the hijab is a lying decoration, as is her slogan. I mean, she gave the slogan of 1971, which is related to Bangladesh. She wasn't even really out of her infancy in 1971. What does she know about 1971? But she has been told to mention 71 as an emotional kind of thing to get her kind of treated by the Bangladeshi voters as somebody who is patriotic and proud of Bangladesh. But she is not a Bangladeshi, she is a British national. And she has no business talking about 1971, which has nothing to do with the denial of rights here of the Bangladeshi origin people by the racists and the racist status quo. So on the 30th of April 2015, a gang of criminals claimed that I had made critical remarks against Lutfur Rahman in the council chamber. I never did, because Lutfur Rahman was never present there. He was physically there, but politically and democratically and ethically, I don't recognize the post of mayor in that sense. So I never addressed anything to the mayor. The petition, the questions that I did present were addressed to the council. And in any case, I never kind of would have needed to make any critical comment, because I had to his face told Lutfur Rahman many times, not in front of these criminals who must have been hired by somebody to kind of target me at that meeting, of which I shall be giving further details in due course. And it is my position, everyone knows I am the strongest, most consistent opponent of the mayor system because of its corruption, not because of who the post holder is or was or would be.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mayor Lutfur Rahman. you. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace to each and every one of you. Fantastic. That is what they voted for in 20.
On the back of this man's achievements. But I am here today. I am here today because you need to know the reason why I am a counsellor and why I became a counsellor in 2010 is because Lutfur Rahman believed that I would be a good counsellor. He believed in me, and in 2010, lo and behold, we didn't run one election, we ran 3 elections. When I was sent to Shackle to stand there as a Labour Party candidate, I won by 3 votes. No one knew who I was there, but this man helped me because he gave me the confidence and the faith that I could do it as a woman. In 2010, this man was elected as a Labour Party candidate, as a mayoral. Don't forget that. He was elected as a Labour Party candidate. And then we had the dodgy just year. And then he was deselected. October 2014, we won again. The people spoke. In October 2010, I remember it well, it was a cold day. And you know, for a pregnant woman at that time, it was even colder. And in November, I had my son, and I was proud to have my son 6 weeks later after I supported Lutfur Rahman. In 2014, we stood again. But in between that time, Lutfur Rahman put his faith into me, asked me to stand as a cabinet member for housing, regeneration and development. That was a bit hard, I just had a baby. And I came back in January 2011. He told me I could do it. He told me that you must do something in this borough with me so that we could regenerate homes. You've heard of John Anderson, he talked about the ocean estate. I remember that years ago, 15, 20 years ago, when the drugs were ridden and crime and disorder was high. But this man, Lutfur Rahman, he started that regeneration. We worked together. The legacy runs through this. We worked together on the Blackwall Reach project. We worked together on the Project 120, which addresses people with disabilities. We worked together to freeze council tax. We worked together to make sure people had a voice, so that his surgeries were flooded with people, so that they had a voice, and that they could be heard, and that the homeless was addressed as well. But last Thursday, I sat in that courtroom. And you know, I came to this country from Bangladesh. I actually know a lot about Bangladesh. In 1971, when it won a war. You know this, but remember this, in the mid-1970s, I was brought up in Kent. And when I sat in that courtroom, I remembered the very first time I felt racism. But the irony of it all, I didn't know what racism was. I was 4 years old in a Church of England school. I was only the only girl of colour, I think I was the only child of colour. And a young white child sat next to me. I started the nursery, and she asked me if I was a gollywog. Do you know, many of the young people may not know what a gollywog was. I didn't know what a gollywog was. I went home and asked my mum what a gollywog was. She didn't know. A gollywog. It took a long time for me to find that picture. I couldn't find it in the books because they were the John and Jane books that told me you have to be blonde, you have to be blue-eyed, you have to be fair-skinned, and the woman has to be in the kitchen and the dad has to be in the garden. All the conjugal roles that defied what I knew, what British values were. Let me tell you, when we did see the picture of the gollywog on the jam jar, my mum said, "You're much prettier than that. What's that got to do with it?" Let me tell you something. to be a Muslim. I am proud to be a Muslim. And when I reach to my Lord, it is in the name of peace and mercy. And I am proud to be a Bangladeshi because I remember the millions of people who died for independence. My father taught me that. And I am proud to be British. I am proud to be British because British life.
So that's part of her video, and it was recorded on 30th of April 2015 at the Water Lily Center. So we shall be continuing with the analysis of that and other bits, because she makes a list of claims there, and they must be diagnosed and rejected on the evidence of her behavior.